Okay, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, Livewire, who's seen this homepage? Okay. You all should have, but Livewire is the most productive way to build your next web app. But more importantly to me is it is powerful, dynamic front-end UIs without leaving PHP. Keyword for me, without leaving PHP. I love JavaScript. Don't tell my boss. But yeah, without leaving PHP. That is what brought me to Livewire back in the day. And more on that in a little bit. But first, hi, I'm Andy. I use they, them pronouns. If you mess up, that's fine. Try and correct yourself. You'll make my day. I am Tech NB everywhere, so you can find me wherever. I'm a lead programmer at Titan, and I am a big nerd, like all of you. I have a Lego City at home. I have a 3D printer. We print fidgets. If you want to see some, come by the Titan desk. I am in 2 local community queer bands where I play clarinet and trumpet and more, but I really don't like air horns. So I really don't want to go over. And I am Livewire's biggest fan. And I can tell you that because I bought a Livewire lightning bolt shirt for this conference. Dyed my hair OG Livewire colors, and yeah. But yeah, my history with Livewire. It started way back here. Dave kind of mentioned this talk. Caleb Porzio, Embrace the Backend, who remembers this talk. Okay. You might be more familiar with this iconic slide. I love this slide, Caleb. It's really funny. But looking at YouTube last week, this YouTuber's comment, this speech should be renamed The Origin of Livewire, is 1000% correct. I rewatched that talk and I'm like, this is the precursor to Livewire. And so if we look at the timeline, Embrace the Backend happened in July of 2018 in Chicago, and then a year later in New York City, Livewire was introduced. And around 6 months later, Livewire V1 was released in February, and in March 18th, 2020, nothing else was going on. I just installed Livewire. Nothing else happened. We're just going to ignore the rest of that. But yeah, why Livewire? At that time, I wasn't at Titan. I was working at a company. We were a small company, but very profitable. We ran a $3 million Laravel app selling stuff. And it had a Vue front end and a PHP Laravel back end, and everything was hunky-dory. Why on earth did I rebuild everything in Livewire? And it was because I was a solo dev, sick of context switching between PHP, Laravel, JavaScript, keeping up to date on everything. And especially at that time, it felt like to me that everything was changing really fast. And it was really hard as a solo dev to keep up with everything, keep everything secure, keep up with features, and everything that I had to do at that job. So Livewire was a godsend for me. So since I've been using Livewire since 2020, I've kind of built hundreds of apps in Livewire. So I kind of know some things. I won't tell you I know everything. That guy does, not me. And maybe Mary Perry, because gosh darn, she'd learn more about Livewire than I think I will ever know, because I'm not an internals guy. But yeah, key number 1. Use wire key for every loop. I know, I have to add a wire key. But yes, every loop. I'm sorry, you just have to. And if you don't believe me, let's look at the docs. It says, if you have used front-end frameworks like Vue or Alpine, you're familiar with adding a key to a nested element in a loop. However, these frameworks, a key isn't mandatory, meaning all items will render, but reorder might not be tracked properly. However, Livewire relies more heavily on keys and will behave incorrectly without them. Trust me, I know. So let's do a little story time. So this is me and my good friend Andrew Morgan. Once upon a time, we were building a to-do app, and we had a bunch of nested to-dos, and it kind of looked something like this, where we had, a high-level thing, nested things, and each button did inline editing and inline trashing, and it was honestly a mess. And I would have loved to take a real screenshot, but I don't have access to that code base anymore, so you get a TL draw. And honestly, we spent days trying to debug this issue where things were re-rendering and we couldn't figure out why, like things were jumping and things were deleting the wrong things, and we spent days on it. Turns out, if we read the docs, for each keys, you need one on the div and you need one on the child. Poop. Well, there goes 5 headaches and 2 days later, but we figured it out. So without a key on a nested Livewire component, Livewire will be unable to match the looped components up between network requests. So use your keys. I know they're a pain in the butt, and honestly, a lot of the Livewire documentation doesn't have them. A lot of the Flux documentation too, but love you, Caleb. But if they're mandatory, they should be there. Okay, key number 2, use the right tool for the job. I am sorry, as much as I love drills, IKEA furniture really doesn't like them, so you have to use the manual screwdriver or maybe a little electric one. Similar with Livewire, not everything needs to be Livewire. I know I hate saying that because I want everything to be Livewire, because anything not Livewire kind of bumps me out. But here we have a courses component. It's this little app that I started building for my partner. And so we have a course which is a class, kind of like Math 101. We have meetings, which is when the course meets, maybe Monday, Wednesday from 9 to 10:30. And the with count students, we want the list of people in the class. And we have this pretty basic blade component where we have got a table, we're showing things, we've got a for each loop, we have a wire key, and we're displaying details about the courses. And for the longest time, my, I must make everything pretty brain was like, let's make that row a Livewire component. Yeah, that's what we should do, because Livewire is awesome. And pass in the course, give a key, but this is all this is doing. It's not live. It's not doing anything. And yes, I understand this is a contrived example, but I know there's plenty of places in your app where you're probably using Livewire that's just rendering a blade view. So instead of this, you could just use a blade component. Or if you want to be old school, you could use an include. Though I do prefer this API. And if we look at the docs again, you might not need a Livewire component. Caleb wrote this, and he wrote Livewire. He says, you might not need a Livewire component. Before you extract a portion of your template into a nested Livewire component, ask yourself, does this content in this component need to be live? If not, we recommend you create a simple blade component instead, and only create a Livewire if the component benefits from Livewire's dynamic nature or if there's a direct performance benefit. And let's not forget Alpine. Okay. Well, some of these slides got janky, which is fine, honestly. In this next slide, this was supposed to be an image of Optimistic UI, which is a blog post that is on the Titan blog where people much smarter than me, Tony and Omar, go into how they used Livewire and Alpine to make Field Goal, our SaaS that does form inputs, a lot faster and smoother using optimistic UI patterns. And honestly, it's a great write-up. Go read that. It's much better than anything I could tell you in 2 to 5 minutes. So, yeah, go do that. What are we on, 3? Keep sinks in the kitchen. Livewire does not need to be a kitchen sink. You do not need a kitchen sink page that shows everything. I know it's really tempting, and I've definitely done it, but maybe not. And not everything needs to be a public property. I know that's a tendency a lot of folks do. I've definitely seen that in a bunch of Livewire apps, but sometimes the best thing to make Livewire faster is to not add Livewire and not add more state to a component. So let's revisit this component and let's make it a little different. Let's say instead of it being a list of courses, let's make it a dashboard. And the dashboard has courses, the staff, students, meetings, everything. And with a render method, this actually looks really clean. Like maybe, where is the pointer? Maybe at the top we've got like a sort property or a filter property, and maybe at the end we've got like redirects or something. And this is fine. And if you change any state on that page, all of these are requerying every time. Every time you click something, every time you do an action, every time you sort, filter, anything. All of these queries are happening again and again and again. Which, if you're in a little baby app, probably not a big deal. If you've got 5 million people in your app, it's a big one. So how do we combat this? Well, you could set them as public properties, but as I already kind of said, the mount method doesn't re-render every time, but those entire lists of courses, staff, students, and meetings are all editable on the front end. They're all public properties. You can do wire.courses.set. And that could be a good idea, or it could not be. It depends on your app, and sorry, best practices are only really better practices, and I can only tell you so much. But for me, what I end up doing a lot of the time is changing all those to computer properties, because computer properties are magic, and they cache. But, as with everything, there is a gotcha, and they cache only for a single request, which I read this morning and was like, oh, poop, I didn't read this before. It is a common misconception that Livewire caches computed properties for the entire lifespan of your Livewire component on a page, which is a normal Laravel request lifecycle, but not a Livewire request lifecycle. However, this is not the case. Instead, Livewire only caches the result for the duration of a single component request. This means that if your computed property methods contains an expensive database query, it will be executed every time your Livewire component performs an update. And I am definitely going to go home and do a bunch of changes to fix this. Because, oh look, Caleb fixed it for us. There's a persist true option in computed that I learned of today. So that keeps it for the whole page lifecycle. And what did I say? Yeah, and again, this whole example was fairly contrived. And in reality, I would probably have, when I was imagining this dashboard component, I was thinking we would have a table of courses and a table of users and a table of students and a table of like a schedule or something. And in reality, I'd probably have those each as different components, not all in one. And each one could manage its own state, each one can do its own rendering, its own updating, and handle itself. But got to show things break before you can fix them. Tip number 4, keeping your app and users safe. I know I needed to include this section because security is important, and it really is. But I also am kind of bad at remembering to add stuff because, yag me. So in most of my apps, I do get, post, or ID, depending on the context, show post, and then can I view this thing? And usually for a show page, that's good enough. You're not really doing much on a show page. And so you can pass the post ID through the mount method, set it to the public property, and as you may or may not know, you could do wire.id set and change that, and then that would be bad. So you can lock your properties, and then they don't change. And who forgets to do this? Because I sure as heck know I do. But I also don't really use IDs that often. How many people are using full page renders or full page components? Because those are secure by default. So I don't have to remember to do junk, and I love that. I love not having to remember things. That's my favorite. So if you store an eloquent model in a public property instead of just the model's ID, Livewire will ensure that ID isn't tampered with, without you needing to explicitly add the locked attribute to the property. For most cases, this is a better approach than using locked. Yes, I don't have to remember to do it because I'm doing it anyway. So, yeah. Who's listened to this? Hey, Ian. And I remember you're working on this thing. I mean, it should have been done by now, but what is it called again? Outro. And in outro, you're talking about where do you put authorization and what do you do? And this guy said, more is better. So I'm going to repeat it and say more is better, because honestly, it's security. More is better. So duplicating authorization isn't a bad idea. So as much as I hate the code that this renders, authorize your routes, authorize your mounts, authorize your methods, and save your butt. So, and a couple of quick tips because I've got 2 minutes left. Use refresh sparingly. When I first started Livewire, I used refresh all of the freaking time, and it's it forces a full component re-render. It's heavy and often unnecessary. Instead, nowadays, I use events to update only what's changed, and I rely on computed properties a lot. And then I unset them whenever those need to be reset. And I tend to think of refresh these days as important in CSS. It's really handy, but I really, really try not to use it. Next one. Extract shared logics into traits. It keeps components focused and readable. It's great for repeated patterns like sorting with sorting, filters with filters, pagination with pagination. Wait. Oh wait, this one comes with Livewire. Yay. So, doing these types of patterns not only keeps your components readable and reusable, but it also matches the paradigm that Livewire's already come up with, which I really like. So here's an example of a trait that I have built recently in my LifeOS app, Sunny. I talked about it on Side Project with Joe Tannenbaum. And so this sort function is a little bit different than the sort function that you'll see in Flux's documentation or Livewire's documentation, where you can click it 3 times instead of just 2. It goes descending, ascending, and then blank, I think. I forget. And then it also resets the page when you update the search. And Jesus, That is how I got a concussion. Reset page, I did that. It was fun. We got on, Caleb and I got on a Zoom years ago, way back when, V1, and I was like, hey, when the page changes or I change a search filter, I need to reset the page. And we did that. So I always really like that one. Don't forget to test. Here is a normal test for me, for a Livewire. I don't want to spend too much time on testing because J-Mac's up next, and he's going to talk about it more. So in this test, we've got a course with meetings, so that meets Monday and Thursday. It's for first grade. It's red. We've got meetings, and we've testing a delete. And we are asserting that we don't see first grade, we see second grade, and those models are null. And I wrote this code a week ago, and then I went into the browser, and I clicked actions and delete, and nothing happened. Because I forgot a wire click. And so this is where Pest's V4 browser testing actually comes in clutch, because you can test that that button clicks the thing and it calls the function, and you can save your butt that way. I was really hoping I wouldn't be the first one to do that, but oh well. So use route or visit testing. Adam's here, and I wanted to say thank you for writing this thing and teaching me how to test, because who learned how to test from this course? It's still good. I still recommend it. Testing is great. And wrapping it up, wire key is not optional. Late is greater than Livewire when you're not doing stuff. JavaScript still stinks, but learn how to do it from people smarter than me. Keep your components lean. Lock down routes, components, props, and methods. Refresh rarely. Traits are your friend. Use Pest browser tests and Livewire tests. And if you get nothing else, Livewire is incredibly powerful. And remember, with great power comes great responsibility. That's it.